Hello YouTube, my name is Paul, hope you're all keeping well. Welcome back to another Ocean Software video. I'll show you 9 unreleased games for the SEGA Mega Drive. Now quite surprising that there were that many, to be honest, because a lot of these games were penciled in for releases sort of like 94, 95. Lots of film tie-ins as you would expect from Ocean Software, and some massive films in here that ended up being huge flops. Hence why the games may not have been released. Very little in the way of arcade conversions though, but there are a few platformers in here as well. So yeah, so what I'll do is go through each game as per usual. There are plenty of ROMs to download. I'll leave some links in the description box below so you guys can go and find these ROMs for yourself. But I did use a resource site called Sega Retro, which is full of fantastic information, so I suggest you check them out if you love your Sega. So yeah, let's crack on with the video and start off with the first game. So first up we got the Flintstones, which was based on the live action film of the same name that came out in 1994. If I remember right, it's one of the early films, or earliest films I remember, where you used human characters to portray cartoon characters. It was pretty good. Now the game was destined to be released on the SEGA Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. Now for some reason the SEGA Mega Drive version didn't get a physical release, but you could play it via the Sega channel only in North America. Now, I'm not quite sure what the Sega channel is or what it's even all about. I don't even know how you would interact playing the game, to be completely honest, back in 94. But yeah, there's a ROM that exists for it, but it only allows you to play the first 2 levels. There's no sound and music, and there's no enemy in the game, so literally you just can go for the entire level just to see what it looks like. So yeah, but a full version of the game does exist. I've just not been able to locate it. In fact, I don't think anybody's been able to locate it, to be completely honest. That'd be great to be able to see it, because I bet it looks absolutely fantastic on the Mega Drive. So yeah, that's your first game. So if you thought the Flintstones was quite vague, Mission Impossible is even worse. There's very little information online about Mission Impossible, apart from the fact it was supposed to be released on the Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, 32X and Sega Saturn. And the game was based obviously on a Tom Cruise film of the same name, which was released back in 1996. Now from what I've read, the game was supposed to be very similar to Flashback, as in like you kind of going along platforms, activating different terminals, solving little puzzles. Very similar in fact to Impossible Mission on the Commodore 64 and the Sinclair Spectrum. How bizarre is that? But yeah, as soon as the developer got wind that the Nintendo 64 was due, they decided to make the game specifically for that system because of the technological advancement. Hence, makes me wonder why it didn't get released on the Sega Saturn then. So yeah, it turned out to be a Nintendo exclusive in the end, so that's it really. Just a few screenshots to go by, but that's all you've got, unfortunately, for this game. So next up is a game that's even more obscure than the previous 2. Now this game would have been called Tank Girl, which is based on a film, and that is based on a comic strip. And the original artist for Tank Girl in the comics was Jamie Hewlett. Now the artwork itself is fantastic, but yeah, it's weird how it translated into the film. I mean, the film is kind of set in a post-apocalyptic dystopian future, a bit like Mad Max. In fact, it looks like Mad Max gone a bit mental, to be completely honest. But yeah, so the main protagonist in the film, obviously being a female, a drug user, dating a mutant kangaroo, driving a tank. That's a weird combination going on there. But yeah, I mean, how they transferred that into the game, no one knows, because no one has got any information whatsoever on the game. It just sounds like absolutely flipping crazy. But yeah, I'll leave some images up so you can have a look at the artwork, because it does look absolutely fantastic, I've got to say. Now, I can imagine if the game sort of use the artwork in the game, it would look great. It's just what the game would have played like is an unknown quantity really. So at number 4 is a game called The Shadow, which is based on a film of the same name that came out in 1994. Now this game was penciled in to be released on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Mega Drive. Unfortunately, the Sega Mega Drive prototype has never been found. Now this particular game, due to the poor box office performance of the film, was scrapped even though it was pretty much completed. So yeah, I've got the Super Nintendo version to play, which actually plays very similar to Final Fight or Streets of Rage. It's actually a very good game from what I've seen. I think it's a bit buggy. There's certain elements of the game where it's broken, like you run out of time quite quickly. Probably way before you should. That might just be my poor gameplay, but it didn't feel that way when I played the game anyway. But yeah, the graphics look fantastic and it plays really, really well with some fantastic music. So yeah, the game itself, I suppose, is loosely based on the film. So the film is based on a superhero, a guy that uses his shadow to rid the world of all the criminals. Yeah, pretty original that, isn't it? So yeah, check the game out because I think you'll enjoy it. Unfortunately, it's not the Mega Drive version. So next up is Lobo, a game which was based on the DC comic character of the same name. Comic character that came about during the 1980s. And kind of rose to his peak during the 1990s, really. Probably why Ocean Software decided to base a game on that particular character. Now, the character Lobo itself still gets used today, and I'm pretty sure it's in Injustice. Not sure if it's Injustice 1 or 2 on the PlayStation 3. But yeah, so it's a 1v1 fighter destined for the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo. Used pre-rendered graphics, very similar in style to Mortal Kombat. It's just when you play the game, it's very sluggish, and it's just nothing of substance to it, to be honest. Now, why the game was cancelled, no one knows. It may have been because the game played really badly, and Ocean decided not to release the game. That could probably be the main reason, to be honest, because it didn't look fantastic, did it? But yeah, so again, you can download the ROM, play it. You can't play the Super Nintendo version, but you can play the Mega Drive version, which is ideal for this particular video. So next up is Putty Squad, which for me was probably one of my most anticipated Amiga titles that never got released. So yeah, it's great to find out it finally got a release on the Amiga through System 3 themselves, who are the developers. Now, I didn't realise there was a SEGA Mega Drive version of the game, so it's quite a nice surprise to find out that there was. Now, the Mega Drive version, from what I've read, is a straight port over on the Amiga version, because the game also came out on the Super Nintendo. But yeah, so Super Nintendo was the only one that was actually officially released in the end, back in 1994. So many years later, the Amiga version came out via a Kickstarter project. There's only a limited amount of box copies up for grabs. And the Super Nintendo version obviously you can buy in the shop. But the Mega Drive version, well, it's non-existent really. But playing it, it plays identical to the other two versions. It's got a weaker sound, but the game is pretty much 100% complete. For you guys to go out and enjoy, really. So definitely play it, because it's one of those games that, in theory, should have got a release, because it was that good. Unfortunately, it didn't. So next up is a film tie-in of mega proportions. Now, this particular film was the most expensive film for its day. I think it came out in 1995 and cost over $170 million. Starring Kevin Costner, who was like the premier film star at the time. Now, Ocean obviously licensed the game, probably cost them a small fortune as well. They were to release it across multiple different formats. Sega Saturn, Sega Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, Virtual Boy, and the Game Boy. But it wasn't due to be released until quite late on in 1995, probably even early 96. So yeah, so the game itself was cancelled, probably because the film was a bit of a flop, or maybe because Ocean Software could only release those games on their Nintendo machines, because ultimately Ocean Software did pin their flag to Nintendo's mast. Very few of their games got released on the Sega machines. So there could be a number of reasons why. It does state that the reasons are unknown. But the ROM is available to play. You can play the whole entire game pretty much. And the game uses good old trusted Ocean Software format really for movie tie-ins, where you've got kind of a lot of different multi-games within the game. So the first part of the game you start off in the ocean, kind of going around the place, and then later on you sort of end up on platforming levels. So yeah, so no idea why it got scrapped. Who knows really? But the game is there for you to try out. So next up is good old Mr. Nutz. Now, this particular game was being developed in tandem with a sequel, which was a bit peculiar really. You had Mr. Nutz on the Mega Drive being developed at the same time as Mr. Nutz Goes Hopping Mad on the Mega Drive. That's the original game, which did get a release, which is more of a slow-paced adventure style game. Whereas the second one was more of a sort of Sonic the Hedgehog clone really. It's a bit strange as well, because you had a kind of like Zelda elements where you're looking down, picking up your bombs and diamonds and stuff like that, and talking to different characters. It was a bit of a peculiar game. But I can't understand why they developed both at the same time, well, especially if their intention was to release both games on the same systems. Because the customers might have got a little bit confused as to why there's two games for very similar names. So the Amiga got one and the Mega Drive got the other. Now a ROM was found for the game, which is great because we can play the game in its entirety, which is fantastic. But yeah, a bit peculiar, wasn't it? Now, I'm not sure if it got released on any other systems, so I didn't actually check before making this video, which doesn't really matter because it's about Mega Drive unreleased games. So there you go. So we finally made it to game number 9, Jelly Boy. Now a game I incidentally missed off of my unreleased Amiga games list about 18 months ago, because I didn't realise it was coming out on that machine. So it should have come out on the Amiga, Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive. Unfortunately it came out on the Super Nintendo. And it only came out in PAL regions as well. Now the game was being developed by Probe, who were quite prolific in the sort of early to mid 90s, especially on the PlayStation. So the game plays okay, looks okay. It reminds me a lot of Bubble and Squeak on the Amiga actually. Sort of going along, I don't know it's a platformer, but the way it looks is quite cutesy, isn't it? Kind of going along really, using your stomach as a weapon. I know the feeling. But yeah, I mean, you could do that, pick up fruit, pick up musical notes, and just make your way to the exit as you would for any sort of game like that. I quite enjoyed it. But again, it probably didn't get released due to licensing reasons more than anything, because the game is finished. And it's half decent, to be honest. Now, there was a game called Jelly Boy 2 released, but it's not related whatsoever to Jelly Boy, because it's called something else. It's called Jelly Boy 2 in Japan, but called something completely different outside Japan, just to add to the confusion. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and thank you very much for watching anyway, and thank you very much for subscribing. I'll see you guys again real soon. So take care, and bye for now.